is tradition here in Cincinnati for the ordination class to ask someone to deliver the sermon on the Friday evening before ordination. The speaker is generally a professor or a teacher or a community rabbi from whom we have learned a great deal. Lucky for us, the individual who will give our sermon this evening is all of the above. When it came time to decide who to ask, my beloved cohort came to a decision in mere moments. It helps that he's so local. Rabbi Sandford Kopnick taught all of us homiletics in our third year and delighted us week after week. We learned a great deal from him, and I've continued to glean nuggets of shining wisdom from him over the remainder of our schooling, none of us perhaps more than me. For more wisdom, it is my deepest honor to invite Judaism's own Sandford Kopnick.
So you look around and you see that there aren't a lot of empty chairs. That meant that I guessed pretty good. Because it's a game we play sometimes. How many people do you think are going to be at services? There's an over and an under, and the winner gets a chocolate chip cookie at the oneg, unless you guess so poorly that actually nobody comes, and then you get a whole plate of chocolate chip cookies. But regardless, there's a lot of counting that goes on in Judaism. We count to 10 for minyan. We count to 40 based on whether or not a chaperone on an Israel trip gets comped. 6 of you understood what I was talking about. That's positive. We guess there'd be about 80, 85 people here, and if you count, it's about that. I am very impressed with myself. More importantly, if you guess high or you guess low and you come within $100 of the actual retail price, well, you get both showcases too. So either way, we count. Tomorrow you will enter the historic Plum Street Temple, and there's no tongue-in-cheek involved with that. It should be one of the great days of your life. And if it's not, work at it tonight to make sure it is tomorrow. It is the spot where our movement has ordained rabbis for generations. And on this historic Shabbat, the weekly parsha in the book of Numbers asks us to count the Israelites. And it says, I love it when a plan comes together. Take a census of the whole Israelite company by the clans of its ancestral homes, listing the names every male head by head. Now, if we were to revise this, we'd count the heads. Wouldn't matter if it was male, female, or any other way somebody chose to describe themselves, because they were needed for a sacred task of going forth and creating space for the Jewish community to function. So in the context of this week's story, for the Torah portion, they're trying to figure out who would be helpful in the tasks that lie ahead. And tomorrow you will be ordained as rabbis in Israel. Each of you with remarkable gifts, your profound talent, and your contagious enthusiasm, not to mention your ability to sing as a boy band. But you'll also be ordained with the task to care for the feeding and joy of the Jewish people. It is an awesome responsibility and also an awesome opportunity. Just like the Torah suggests, you'll be asked to count frequently. Hopefully, you will need to not be recruiting a fighting force, but rather you'll be asked to figure out participants in a program. You'll identify who is capable to provide the resources for an initiative, or even to count who will be gathered for the event, who you can count on to read Torah, and how many you will be to have those people read Torah. Just a few things that you'll count. but as you three are ordained, I am reminded that sometimes all you need to do is count to one. Last weekend was the anniversary of a young man's bar mitzvah. This student was not a typical student, yet he was not unique to the Reform movement either. His mother had struggled with addiction. His parents were divorced. His father had a new wife, but also his father had a hard time keeping a job and putting food on the table. Thankfully, extended family helped create the stability and moral compass to keep the young man moving forward and on a path to overcoming the challenges that this very rough home life could create. Every year, I think about that boy's bar mitzvah from Parashat Bechukotai, last week's Torah portion. That year, that week, that day, counting to one was the same as counting to 600,000. That year, that week, that day, was a test of our tradition and our faith and our future. A deeply troubled and challenged young man stood as part of the chain of tradition. He wanted to be there. It was easy to count the people in the room or the family that had a mass and the people who weren't present that day along with him. And the number of the B'nai Mitzvah that had stood on the bima that day prior to his bar mitzvah was a big number as well. But that day, it wasn't about counting any of them. It was about counting him, counting to one. Sometimes all you have to do is count to one. Last week's Torah portion had a few very troubling lines for this bar mitzvah. It said, Im bechukotai telechu va'et mitzvotai tishmoru. If you follow my laws and faithfully observe my commandments, I will grant your rain in their seasons so that the earth shall yield its produce and the trees of the field their fruit. And then it goes on a few verses later to say, but if you do not obey my commandments, do not obey me nor observe these commandments, if you reject my laws and spurn my rules so that you do not observe all my commandments, blah, 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 I will wreak misery upon you, consumption and fever, which cause the eyes to pine and the body to languish. This poor kid had to read that Torah portion, complete with the misery that would be undoubtedly his if he didn't follow God's commandments. He was 13, and he had a mother that struggled with addiction, whose father struggled to feed the family, and who did whatever he could to help anyone and meet them anywhere he could. But he felt abandoned by God. He felt the curse and didn't really realize the blessing. He wondered why we were asking him to read this of all Torah portions. And he also wondered, how is it possible to believe in a document like this? That young man's world was filled with curses and very few blessings, if you asked him that day. He was a great student, an obedient and thoughtful son and brother and grandson. He was rarely in any kind of trouble and was intentional in all the ways that we would hope for as becoming a moral and kind and generous and loving kid. He knew that his life was filled with misery, and so did we all. And the promise of a future blessing where the rains come in their seasons felt to him remote, if not impossible. He openly wondered whether the Torah portion was teaching him that he obviously had done something to warrant the curses that so filled his life. What do you say to him? That's rhetorical. You don't have to answer today. But someday. That day, this one student, this one young Jewish kid, challenged our tradition and at least one rabbi to explain. He wanted to know how it could possibly be that we embrace this document. So after a question like that, any decent rabbi would pray for a call from their secretary that an emergency has occurred, where the answer would not necessarily be required that minute. That rabbi might have prayed for what happened today, a flood in the kitchen. Oh, I can't answer you. I have to go to the kitchen and mop it. Anything but answer the question of such theological importance to this kid. It's possible, as a fundamentalist might read it, that blessings happen only to people who do good and curses to only people who don't, who do evil, who do wrong. But we have all lived long enough to know that that's not true. Problem is, that kid might not have lived long enough yet. But more importantly, that young man lived long enough to experience true pain and true misery, and how it so badly overshadowed his blessings. After a few weeks of sitting with the words, delving into reasons why the Torah might say this, the rabbi and the bar mitzvah together determined that all lives have tragedy, curses, and difficulties. And while evil is not consistently punished, nor good consistently rewarded, there is value in creating a world where we're striving for the blessing and trying to keep away the curse. And the Torah does help us teach that and model that and strive for that. When that young man's mother eventually died from her illness, his classmates showed up for him because he was a good guy who deserved whatever they could share by being present for him. The joy he found even when dealing with the hard times was a result of trying to do right, to be good, and to find life's best, even when we are surrounded by horror. And God's blessings come with the feeling that we can associate with trying to be good, to do right, and to be part of a community that works for such goodness and blessing. He started to move from his black and white world of I am cursed, not blessed, to maybe I can find the blessing even when the curse finds me. Tomorrow, I pray, will be one of the greatest days of your lives. Tomorrow will significantly impact you and the Jewish people. And it will signify a moment when our movement embraces you as a leader and as a teacher and as a representative for all that is good in our faith and our tradition. Tomorrow is the opportunity for you to accept the challenge of our history, to accept the challenge of this very rare, odd moment we find ourselves in, and also to work toward a good future for our people. There are 3 very lucky synagogues that await your arrivals and the blessings that you will bring to those communities. And rightly so. But don't go and become a bean counter. Don't measure your success by counting to the right number so that you don't have to set up the extra chairs. Don't make it so that 300 in the room makes you feel like, woohoo, I'm a success, especially if nobody understood what you were saying. Don't measure being 100 people when sometimes only counting to 1 is what you need to do. The good you will do comes one person at a time, one dearly bereaved, where your silent presence is more important than any wisdom you might try to impart, or when a kid challenges you with the hardest question you've heard in a long time, and where not knowing the answer is fine, provided you stand next to him or her or them and embrace the question and the search for the answer. One of the most meaningful things to have come out of that bar mitzvah that day was what happens when we conclude a Torah book, a book of the Torah, when we say, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong, and let us strengthen one another. That he could resonate with as he looked for the blessing and not the curse. The idea that he was not alone, and that while we counted to one with him, he could count to a much higher number eventually. May God bless you as you move from your ordination to the profound challenge and even greater opportunity that awaits you as God shows you the next place. May you be strengthened by those of us who have had the honor to be called your teachers. And may you find the strength from those who seek your guidance as they seek to understand the world in which we live. And may your ability to count be first and foremost filled with the innumerable blessings that can be yours. And please remember, it's always good to start with one.